Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of Boston Borough Council's Corporate and Community Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm Paul Gleeson, and I'm chairing the meeting today, and with me is my Vice Chair, Councillor Susan Welbury. First, our housekeeping rules are as follows. Restroom facilities are available for ladies on this floor and for the gentlemen halfway down the stairwell. In the event of a fire alarm, officers will escort everyone to the fire point in the car park. This meeting is being streamed live, and as such, please may I ask all persons addressing the meeting to do so through their microphones. Please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who deemed to breach this requirement will be warned and asked to refrain. If their behaviour persists, they will be asked to leave the meeting. Please make sure your phones are turned off. So, the preliminary items of today's meeting: to receive apologies for absence and notice of substitutions, if any.
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillors Ariambath, Danny and Pierpoint with no substitute members. Apologies from Councillor R. Austin with Councillor A. Austin substituting, and also apologies from the portfolio holder, Councillor Sandeep Ghosh. Thank you.
Thank you. To sign the minutes of the previous meeting, do I have your agreement to that? Thank you. To receive any declarations of interest in respect of any item on this agenda, does any member have any interest to declare? Councillor Alison Austin.
Thank you, Chairman. With respect to the second agenda item, working in, yes, that's the one, with the voluntary and community sector, I have been a volunteer at Centrepoint Outreach from round about the millennium, and as it is referred to where there's a grant, I am a director stroke trustee of that charity.
Thank you.
And could I at this point say that the name of the charity is Centrepoint Outreach, as distinct from Centrepoint, the charity in London?
Any other declarations of interest? No.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I will declare that I am a volunteer for the Vista 400 group, and we have received grants.
Okay, thank you. To receive any written questions from members of the public?
No questions, Chairman. Thank you.
This concludes the preliminary items, and we now move to part 2 of the agenda. Our first item of business this evening is the artificial intelligence policy on page 7 of the agenda. This will be presented by the report's author, Corey Gooch, our business intelligence and change manager, with Susan Rolfe, our insight and transformation manager, in support. Before we start, I just point out we are looking at our policy on AI, not whether it's a good thing, whether it's clever, whether we need it, and so on. You know, this is about our policy should we decide to do something of that ilk. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, members. So, yeah, today I'll be presenting the artificial intelligence policy, which can be found on page 7 of your agenda packs. So firstly, to provide the committee with a bit of background on this policy, the policy has largely been drafted by IT with extensive input from our data protection team, SLT, portfolio holders, myself and our transformation team, who we envision as the link between our PSPS colleagues and the councils when it comes to AI and how we might utilise it in the most appropriate and effective manner. So as an overview, in essence, the proposed AI policy aims to provide a governance structure for the use of artificial intelligence within the council, addressing both its benefits and associated risks. The policy outlines the types of AI, their applications, and establishes mechanisms for accountability, transparency, and risk management. Just briefly, I would just like to highlight for members who are not so aware what it is when we say AI. Artificial intelligence, referred to as AI, is when computers and digital systems are programmed to mimic thinking and learning, or human thinking and learning. It uses large amounts of data to learn patterns and make decisions, allowing it to perform tasks, understanding speech and emotion, and even driving cars. As AI processes more data, it gets better and improves its performance over time. AI itself is an umbrella term which covers a huge range of functionality, and I would encourage members who are keen to understand more on this to attend the AI briefing sessions that Jackie and Lewis from PSPS are running. I attended the session on Monday, and there is another one taking place in September. Obviously, we can arrange for these invites to go out. They cover AI in a lot more detail than I'm going to be able to here, including its applications and where we might look to start using it in future within PSPS and the council. So hopefully members have had a chance to read through the policy, but to provide some key points for the policy, the main goal is to cover the following. Governance and accountability. The policy sets out a framework for ethical AI use, ensuring compliance with regulatory standards and safeguarding public interest. Risk management and legislation. It addresses concerns related to privacy, bias and security, incorporating best practices for GDPR compliance and data protection. And finally, innovation and service delivery. AI is here to stay, and it is growing. So by adopting a consistent AI policy, we as a council and the wider partnership can foster innovation while maintaining community trust and enhancing service delivery. The recommendations for this report are that the committee considers and supports this policy, which will then go on to Cabinet for final approval. Thank you, and of course I'm happy to take any questions, comments or feedback.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Rizan.
How much AI do we currently use at this present time? I see you're going to be reviewing in a year and then 3 years. So how much do we use now and what is expected over the next year?
So at present, it's very minimal. We're finding that AI is slowly creeping into our systems, hence the need for this policy, which really, as the chairman said, it sets out the governance framework in covering our risk before AI creeps in more. There are a couple of, and I can confirm with IT for a definitive list, I know there are a couple of minor AI suites built into things like Teams. There's a program called Microsoft Copilot. There are a couple of AI systems in use within PSPS, and again, that's something they cover within their session, how they're currently looking to utilize it. I'm happy to provide that list. In terms of the council side, it's very minimal, if any. I often compare it to sort of, if you have an Amazon Alexa at home, technically that's AI, and it's something we have already without being aware. I feel that we'll see it creeping in more and more, but certainly there are no decisions or directions in terms of what we're going to be using in terms of AI systems at this stage. When those systems are identified and come forward, they would follow the same governance procedure as any new IT system. There'd be data impact assessments and all of these things considered before anything was implemented, including we are exploring possibly bringing in an AI strategy, which essentially looks at how we would use it. So we're some way off that yet, but it is coming, if that makes sense.
Councillor Alison Austin.
Thank you, Chairman. What potential drawbacks are there? I just mentioned it in passing to my daughter, who doesn't live around here and works in recruitment in Northampton. But she said, "Well, it can fill in a form, or it can make a form, but the one thing it can't do is assess someone's personality, which from the point of view of a job application, certainly in this sort of organisation is very important." So can you think of drawbacks, that we mustn't rely on this entirely?
Yeah, there are a few. I think like any IT system, there will need to be a degree of human oversight. AI is interesting because it uses language-based learning. So whilst it wouldn't, you're quite right, it wouldn't be able to assess the personality of a person. It can identify when language starts to become, I suppose, negative, or the customer might be frustrated. It picks up on that, and it would adjust its responses. I guess show empathy to a degree by sort of understanding the customer's needs. So that's, I think, like any IT system, it will need human oversight. Anything, and it covered in the policy, anything that we generate via AI. So if we start generating web pages via AI or anything on that matter, would need human. We would need to review it. We would need to check it. I appreciate that almost takes away the automation because we would still need to be involved, but obviously that covers the concerns that AI might make a mistake or that something that we're generating might be generated wrong. If built incorrectly, AI can come across as biased. It can, again, it's designed to replicate a human, and if it's not, I suppose if you're not governing it properly, if you're not reviewing the system properly, you wouldn't want it to make a wrong decision or come across biased in any way. I suppose being an IT system, there are security risks, as with any IT system, and that's something that our colleagues in IT would guard against and mitigate, just like any other IT system. But I think those drawbacks, I think from a being a very new system, the other drawback I would say is there's always a concern that AI will replace jobs and put people's jobs at risk. And again, I feel that it was covered very nicely in the briefing. This isn't about replacing jobs. It will generate new jobs, but it's about improving our efficiency. I think the example I always use in terms of AI is if we've got vulnerable residents who obviously don't want to use an AI system, they want to speak on the phone. The benefits of AI is if you had a system in place that could respond to someone who was contacting the council about, what day is my bin day, or, what do I need to change my address for XYZ? And AI would be able to pick up that response quite simply, whilst vulnerable residents would get through on the phones quicker because the traffic would be lower because more calls would be diverted in that sense. So there's numerous applications for that. Obviously, the benefits should greatly outweigh the risks, but yeah, hopefully that helps.
Councillor Mountain.
Thank you, Chair. You've touched on actually part of the concern that I've got is obviously AI or certainly ChatGPT and things like that within the customer service and public role. Obviously, this is quite a broad policy, and I know it's to cover the introduction of AI through the council, which I can't see any major issue with the policy. My only concern at this present time moving forward is utilising it in a customer service role like you've just described. It's still relatively new, even in the IT sector, and there are responses that come back inconclusive and they come back incorrect. My only concern is what safeguards are going to be put in place to basically mitigate the council looking silly, because if you look at, I believe it was EasyJet recently, a group of young hackers, that's the best way I can describe them, found it quite hilarious to get it to put a rather rude response and then plaster that all over the social media, which is obviously an impact to obviously the business. And basically what I don't want is the council to look silly because somebody thinks it's really good fun to play with it.
Yeah, no, of course, it's completely understandable. I think there's a couple of points there, and again, I completely agree. I think there was a case. It was Derby City Council implemented AI. A reporter picked up on that, did some tests on it, and found it sort of put them in a loop of not being able to answer their query. I won't pretend to be that knowledgeable on IT as our IT colleagues. I do know that to safeguard against that particular instance, what's built into, they would refer to it as a chatbot. What's built into that would be if the query can't be answered on the first or second attempt, it's up to you how many, the chatbot will automatically push out the customer contact number or connect them to an agent. So it's almost like a first and second line of defense rather than this is your only option. It's if the AI can't answer it or the user isn't happy, again, which they would pick up from the language-based learning model, they would push that customer to a traditional and more reliable channel in that sense. Obviously, there are concerns of AI with things like reverse engineering, as you say. Can it be made to look like the AI is, again, making the council look in a certain way? That I would see, again, from my sort of basic level of knowledge, there'd be a couple of safeguarding against that. First, it would be rigorous testing. There would be months of testing, user testing, internal testing. and that would be really putting the system against some strain, testing it in every capacity it can to make sure that that doesn't happen. With an AI system, and again, it depends on what system was implemented. We are some way off that, but depending on the system that was implemented, they would have their own policy, which in a nutshell says that any data or any information that a user would be putting into that system, they are responsible for, and the AI isn't responsible necessarily for what is generated out. So we would need to be very careful on that. I completely appreciate that, but I think there are a lot of safeguards against it. We are working, and specifically our IT colleagues in PSPS, they are working specifically with other councils around the country who are at these early stages of the journey, somewhat further than what we are, but the benefit there is learning from their mistakes or anything that they might have come across. So we are working closely with other councils on this, rather than us ourselves just being the sort of sole pioneers of that and developing from that. But again, I think my sort of bottom line with that would be any system that comes in would need rigorous testing, impact assessments to make sure we're guarding against all these things, risk registers, project implementations. So a lot, because it can be a risky area, and it's very new.
Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Yeah, yes, Councillor Woodliff.
Elon Musk was on the radio talking about AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, where the robots take over the world and human beings become redundant overnight. Whether that's just nonsense or not, I don't know. But I think this particular technology is moving very, very quickly indeed. And I think we need to be sure that we are on top of it before it comes on top of us. That's the thing I think I'm concerned about, that this technology is moving very, very quickly. And the talk is, of course, that ordinary jobs will disappear. The machines will do it all. What future for the human race? I don't know. But I don't know whether we are moving quickly enough here, whether this technology will overtake us. Do you have a comment on it? On the party back. Thank you very much. That was the technology.
Yes, I mean, I think really on that, I was having this conversation earlier. AI is a very new world. It's moving at a very fast pace, and I think the formal review of this policy is 1 year. Informally, I think we need to be reviewing this policy and making sure it's relevant and up to date, even more frequently than that. So we do need to keep on top of all of the things that come in, and again, that's something we do with IT and obviously data protection and all the teams that are involved, including my own. I think the question on, will AI take over the world, and that it's a very tricky one. I think I've listened to a lot of Elon Musk myself, and I think like we're doing here, AI on a grander scale or on the grander stage needs to be we need to be guarding against it. We need to make sure there's governance procedures in place, and I think that's something that's Elon Musk in particular is a big advocate of. We need to be keeping it in check, keeping on top of it, making sure that we're in control essentially, so it doesn't flip around basically. But the benefits are there if it's done correctly, which is while we're sort of looking at it.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mountain.
Thank you, Chair. Just in regards to what you've just said, with obviously keeping it in check, and it needs quite a lot of review. Would it be more beneficial, rather than reviewing for the first year and then every 3 years, to review every year for the first 5 years, because of how quickly it changes?
Yeah, I'm completely happy with that. I think that's a very valid point. So I'd be happy to amend that review cycle. I think that's
Thank you. Anybody else? No. So whilst I must admit I'm rather sit in the camp of Captain Ludd and Captain Swing, this is a nice, well-written report. It makes sense. It's legible, and I think it sits where we need to be at the moment. We understand it's an issue that is going to arise, and we're addressing it. I think Councillor Mountain is correct in saying that we should keep it under a more constant review. But the recommendation is that the committee considers the policy and provides comments, which we've done. And our main comment would be that we think it should be an annual review. And I move that we recommend the report to Cabinet.
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Seconded by Councillor Mountain. Those in favour, please show. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Whilst our meeting is exciting, feel free to leave. We now go to page 21. Let me find my notes. Yeah, so this is working in partnership with the voluntary and community sector. It will be presented by the portfolio holder, Councillor Emma Creswell, supported by our Assistant Director for Wellbeing, Emily Spicer, and a Community Leadership Manager, Nikki Holden. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Boston Borough Council and as the South and East Lincolnshire Councils Partnership, we recognise the importance of the work of the voluntary and community sector. It's a really, it's really a big thing for us. This includes supporting the communities in the South and East Lincolnshire to lead longer, safer and healthier lives, which is what we all strive for. The communities themselves also have a lot to offer in respect to playing an active volunteering role in the locality, with volunteering showing positive physical and mental health benefits to all the individuals involved. The report provides an overview of activity that is being supported and further developed by the South and East Lincolnshire Councils Partnership. Whilst bringing this report forward to Corporate and Community Committee, I ask for your views on the approach taken in working with the voluntary and community sector within Boston and wider across the South and East Lincolnshire Councils Partnership. So I thank you for your time and I would like any questions.
Councillor Mountain.
Thank you. It's a very nice balanced report. Again, volunteers, I believe, are an absolute asset to our local community, and you're absolutely right. It hits everything home. It's very good for the volunteers that do it. It's very good for the local populace as well, because it makes things a little bit nicer and a little bit more looked after. My only concern is when volunteering can go too far and what mechanisms we have in place for that. I can only sort of speak on the experience that I have, and as you can tell, I'm dressed like a tennis ball this evening because I've come straight from work. There's been numerous times where volunteer groups have picked litter off the A16 off the central reservation of John Adams Way. My heart sinks when I see that, because from their point of view, they're doing a wonderful thing and really helping the community, and they are. But the problem is they're going against legislation. As a minimum on the John Adams Way and the A16, they should be in what I'm dressed in now, full high vis, with a road safety marker. They're putting themselves in undue risk that they don't know about. And this is where I think the training needs to come through on, and we nearly need to focus on that to make sure that they understand the risks that they're taking in certain aspects.
Yeah, we totally take that on board. And if you look at the charter, which is at the back, you can see that we've said that explicitly that volunteers will have support from a neighbouring supervisor throughout their journey, that they will not carry out any duties that were formerly carried out by paid employees. We think that's really funny that we're not sort of exploiting them, if you like, or using them for a different avenue. And we've said that they will complement the core work that we do. So we would use them in that. So I hope that that allays some of your concerns.
Brilliant, thank you.
Councillor Izard.
Yeah, I noticed through the policy, although they're not going to be paid in any way, they can claim out of pocket expenses. And obviously we are giving them training, which is great, and certain PPE, hopefully, to do their tasks. So my one question is about insurance cover. Are we going to be covering anything that way with them?
Yeah, we've spoken to our insurance company about the whole trusted volunteer scheme, which is why we've got the training in place. They've been on the journey in terms of our policies and procedures, our welcome pack and all our training that will be provided to our volunteers, and they're absolutely on board and happy with everything that we'll be doing. In terms of our trusted volunteers, people will then sign up and become one of our trusted volunteers. So yeah, I can confirm that conversations happened with our insurance team.
Lovely. Maybe we could add that under the volunteers charter that they're covered under the council insurance as well.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that, and I can look to add that in. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? No. I think people have come to visit us, which is nice. I don't know whether anybody in the audience has any.
Sorry, Councillor Staples just had.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Staples, but I'll come back in a minute.
I'd just like to pick up on, basically what Councillor Mountain has said about people, probably putting their lives at risk. Also, with helping to run a community group, I am a little bit concerned sometimes that tables are lifted, chairs are lifted, and members are doing an awful lot of physical work. And should something happen to one of them, how do we stand?
I think that's part of the training. I think what we need to do is make sure that, for example, they've understand about manual handling, understand about safety in the community. And I think it's about educating them into what they should and shouldn't be doing. I think that's like a core point of the training. Do you want to?
If I may, yeah. Also, obviously, this is talking about our volunteers, as in volunteers that we're working for the council. But what I can absolutely do is put our volunteer coordinator in touch with groups like yourselves to give that kind of best practice advice. And we can kind of advertise that she is there to support. Appreciating that obviously you're going to have your own set in terms of your own committee and how you want to run your group, but we certainly could share some of that best practice and share those training courses that we are able to access. That can absolutely happen as part of her role.
Councillor Izard.
So taking that last point, do you intend growing the amount of voluntary groups that are established with the council, taking like Helen's group into account? And I know there's lots of single volunteers about in our wonderful borough doing a great job at the moment. So how do we kind of draw them in so that they feel part and parcel of what we're trying to achieve here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of our role in the community leadership team is always about supporting those groups and highlighting those groups and making sure that they have got the right governance in place. And we kind of do that as a day-to-day anyway. But yeah, in terms of those people that are volunteering, either individually or as a group, we would absolutely happy to take them along on the journey and support as and when we can. Yeah, definitely.
Councillor Mountain.
Thank you, Chair. Just touching on what you're saying with growing the groups, I was part of the car parking subcommittee where we looked at obviously car parking charges and things like that moving forward. One of my suggestions within that was trying to give back to the local community, and it was around sort of the volunteering groups and the volunteering aspects, sort of like your armed forces cadets, your jazz clubs, your salsa clubs, where we're trying to promote this active and healthy lifestyle. But the biggest complaint that I've had from multiple organisations now, like the Scouts, the cadets, is there's nowhere to park. They're having to, these are volunteers that are trying to lead a group and there's nowhere to park. They're having to park. It might be worth something exploring outside of this committee to look at possibly free parking for community chair leaders to help grow the local town and the local volunteering sector.
Yeah, that's definitely something we'll take away and discuss with Councillor Ghosh. Thank you.
Any other members? Oh, Councillor Drayton.
What about getting cones with volunteers at work and signs up to make it safer for them?
Yeah, obviously we can't dictate what other groups are doing. We can only share that best practice and advice and guidance. But if any of our trusted volunteers were to ever do anything on any of the highways, it would absolutely be done in conjunction with the highways, and all appropriate safety would be undertaken. And whether that be cones or arranging for roads to be shut, it would absolutely happen. But obviously we can't dictate to other groups what they do. We can only issue advice and guidance.
Thank you. As I was saying, I know that anybody. Oh, yeah, Councillor Alison Austin. Sorry, Wim.
Just a thought that went through my mind in the from the last comment. I don't know it was yours, I think. Sorry, I don't know your name.
It's Nicola.
Nicola, sorry. I know that, for instance, with regards to the Boston Marathon, which is entirely run by volunteers, but until very recently, my husband, was very involved with it. But there's this thing called the Safety Advisory Group, SAG, that, you have to satisfy them. And I don't know how wide a range of activities would get covered, with that. But it's something obviously that is important in that case. So I'm sure there's other events that do need the safety advisory people to advise them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Alison. And it is just advice. So that's it is advice. So we can only advise our trusted volunteers. Obviously, we can push them into what we would really, say is best practice and how we expect them to work. But for all the other groups, it is just advice. And if they, we can't obviously force them to take it, as Nicola said.
As I was saying, yeah. So if anybody in the audience who's come here would like to just come and comment on volunteering and anything, please feel free. If you can come to the table and use the microphone and say who you are, please.
Christopher Dorrington. I'll sit on the chair. When I was at the walking group today, the Health Walks, we've actually amalgamated some of the people from Tuesday, walk leaders, come and do. And today Karen and that has given up and another person's given up. But when we were doing the walk today, Brian, I had to go at the front of him just to be very careful, like wearing the vis and stuff. And but now Fran's took it over. I mean, I wear my vis when I'm going back home. Don't take it off. Some of them do. But yeah, that's a good thing really, because even if you're not a volunteer and you're going on a bike, you need it for and you do as well. And I think so. Yeah, that was an example today. So we sort of like there was more details to that, but I think and I think Rodney probably would the same. There's probably the same thing with.
Thanks, Chris.
Right.
Shall I
just turn it off?
Yeah, if you just press the button, that's great. Yeah.
Say something, Ron. Go on.
I'm not good at making speeches, but I thought I'd better just come and I think most folks know me, don't they?
Yeah, just for the record, Rodney.
No, it's to do with the boat business that I wanted to put you eyes with. I've had 33 years of commercial boating on the river, and we've had about 4 sort of very bad years because COVID. And
excuse me. Can you speak into the mic?
Yeah, that's it. Voice isn't very good today, but it'll get better.
You've got the trick mic, I think, at the moment. It's the one that wobbles around. So. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, is that any better?
Yeah.
Right. I'll try and say a few words then. No, it's that we've had trouble with the weed and, well, it's COVID and then flooding, and we didn't do anything that year. And then we've had 3 years of weed on the river, which is to do with the Environmental Agency not doing the job properly, wouldn't listen to anybody that uses the river. But I don't want to bore you with all this. I mean, I've got a lot of information to pass on. I can't make the speeches now. I can make the bullets for somebody else to fire because I've got quite a lot of ammunition. Because what's happened, with the Environmental Agency not doing the maintenance and jobs on the river like they used to, it's just about spoiled all the recreation things that have been happening on the river, all the time I've known it. And it's so silly because it's so simple to keep it working, but they just, I don't know, it's after the well, up to the COVID, it wasn't too bad, but somehow we've got some younger ones in charge of all these things that are not experienced with what happens on the ground. And they will not listen to, experienced folks. I mean, I'm not saying they all want to listen to me all the time because it gets boring, but I've got quite a lot of practical experience now, and we want to keep this river working, for all the activities that happen. And the main reason that things have gone wrong is when they put this wonderful barrier in. I don't know whether most of you know, you perhaps heard it all before, they wouldn't put the lock at the side of it to make, to give it the volume it needs to get the water out quick enough. I mean, they said, they went to a meeting at Lincoln, it was all sorted out. The barrier was going in first and the lock was going into the side of it. So we got water level through town, which was going to promote visitors to the town. And it was, sort of making the river a big success for Boston. And they went, and of course it was good for the Lincoln County Council not to put the lock in because they were donating 11 million towards the situation, half for the lock and half to promote tourism. And for some reason, they managed to get that taken out of it. And they were going to put the lock in at a later date. Well, it's 7 years ago, and there's no intention of doing. They blocked the other half of the river up permanently. And we've got 25 metres of flow through the barrier, and there used to be 55. And they try and telling everybody that you can still get the volume of water through. It's tide locked for 4 hours anyway, but they haven't allowed for all this. And the biggest thing, to promote Boston again is trying to get the lock put back in, if it's a possibility. I mean, it works. It's got to be worked with Lincoln and the EA, but I think they've given or trying to make out they're not responsible now for putting the lock back in again. They got the money there to do it with, and they spent a fortune on the Boston dock, and won't admit how much. They've given me 3 emails telling me why they're not telling me how much they spent on it, but it's somewhere between 30 to 40 million. And now they never put the lock back into the dock like it was supposed to be to stop the flooding. And it's still waiting. The gates have been there for 3 years, I think, waiting to go in. So if we get a surge, it'll go over the gates of the lock and then Mudfoster and flood Boston and Skirbeck. So this wonderful barrier isn't wonderful at all. It's spoilt the drainage system of the fens, and it spoilt all the activities on the river. I'll give over talking about that, but I think everybody are quite pleased with what I've been doing in the last 32 years, because I started this boat business to, entertain people, well, not so much entertain them, give them the experience of using the river and visitors out to see the seals, and we do RSPB trips, 12 a year, and they like to go out there, and the sea trips are getting more popular than they used to do, but we've had 4 bad years, and the finances I've had to keep putting into the business to keep it going. And we've never been able to get any help, grant money, apart from the big local were kind enough to donate us 4,500 when COVID was there, and another one, was it last year, which was very appreciated, because to keep both boats running for Boston, it's costing £20,000. It's £10,000 each boat just to get all the safety things done that we have to have, and the skipper's licenses and insurance and everything. So,
thank you, Rodney. This is a bit outside of the scope of this report, but I think there is maybe some work that we need to be looking at doing in the future in the leisure use of the river. So yeah, I think that is something that we can do. As I say, at the moment, we're looking more about how we work with volunteer groups.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But
that's all right. No, it's fine. But I think you have raised a valid issue, which is for us to look at at some stage, how we maximise the leisure use of the river.
I mean, is there
Councillor Isaac.
any brilliant ideas of how we're going to get a little bit of help with the cash flow until we get running again? So when the business is working properly without all the weed on the river to stop it, it was self-financing.
Yeah.
But,
Just saying, Rodney, obviously your group of volunteers, aren't they?
most of them are, yes. There's only one that's fully paid.
So we are talking about volunteers, but I understand where your frustrations are. But again, I look over to these experts. Would a volunteer group like Rodney's Boston Bell come under your kind of policy?
I think because of the nature of it being a business, it's quite difficult for the funding. Would it be a charity? We'd obviously be in a different situation.
With a CRC, if we made it a CRC, would that solve the food problems? But I've got 4 people now that's got the skipper's licenses, which we've had to pay for. The fishermen, I think they got theirs with the levelling up fund, but it's had to come out of the business, out of my pocket actually. But we needed these because I'm got more mature and can't do as much as I used to, so I'm delegating to these.
Thank you. As I say, I think it might be an idea if at some stage, if the officers will get in touch with you and have a chat,
Yes, please.
But this is slightly outside of what we're
I know,
discussing at
sorry
the
about
moment.
that, but it gave me a chance.
Okay,
to tell.
Councillor Woodliff. You can come and sit here if you like.
Promotion.
Yeah.
Promotion. Yeah. That's when you're backbench. Yeah. Oh, okay. Double one, you get Tim.
Yeah.
I want to
Could you turn your mic off, please? Turn the mic off.
I want to express my support for all that's written in this report. I think it's the work done by volunteers is amazing. I suppose that the thing I'm picking out, I think it concerns most of all about the welfare of people generally is the cost of energy. And I think that it's, well, this is horrendous, isn't it, really? It's the cost of energy. And it worries me that people are not going to be able to heat their houses going forward. They can't afford to cook food and so on. I note 4.5, and that, so we have the 50 warm hubs throughout Senate able to benefit from £30,000 warm perspective funding received via National Grid funding. National Grid makes £30,000 profit in a minute, I think, knowing them. But anyway, whatever it is, it's some money coming our way. What other industries and so on are actually contributing to this particular area? Because I am very, very concerned that like bread and butter thing, for instance, here, they're very, very important. But I am worried about the heating side of things. We have a cold winter, people die, and it's the cost of energy, I think, that worries me most of all. So I have no answers to this.
No,
but
if the officers do.
Oh, excellent. Thanks. The officers know. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak.
That's fine. Stay at the table. Yep.
Thank you. And thank you very much for that question, because it's an exceptionally important question. And I appreciate that we're in July now, but it will soon be autumn, winter, and people will start looking for where they are going to find additional funding if they so need it. Now, over the last number of years, we've had what they call the Household Support Fund, which actually this report does cover part of the element of that, which Lincolnshire Community Foundation had administered it for the councils of the South and East Lincolnshire Councils Partnership. Now, obviously, with the change in government, it may be that a different scheme comes forwards. We don't know any details of that. Usually we get them quite short notice, usually around September time. And obviously with the autumn budget coming forwards around that time, it will probably tie itself into there. Now, the National Grid funding was something quite separate, of which Nicola here absolutely spotted it and was in a good position to be able to apply and demonstrate how that would be go to very vulnerable communities across the South and East Lincolnshire. So I think there's a couple of things for me. Number one, we're in a very good position to be able to grab this funding or any funding that is available in these types of areas. And two, we've already got the network in terms of the larger funding, so the government
funded schemes, we're in a good position from an administration perspective, because we've got really good relationships with people like the Community Foundation, who are a large volunteering and community group. So please rest assured we will grab those funds if they are available to us for our communities.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mountain.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of points. One relating to Councillor Woodliff. The warm hub spaces, obviously throughout the parish councils as well, and the outreach. I was at Wibberton Parish Council a couple of weeks back, and they've opted not to continue with the warm hub, not opening the community centre this winter. I guess my question is, what are you going to sort of try to promote to the parish councils to continue this? Because it was a low uptake, that's why they don't want to open it. And, you know, how can we sort of proceed? Because whilst it was a low uptake last year, this year it might be a harsher winter. It was quite mild last year. There might be the need. And the second one that I just want to address is from the volunteering side. I fully know what you're on about, Rodney, with obviously the weeds and things like that. But this is obviously the Boston Bell that's going on about this. This is the Sea Scouts, which were going on about it. The rivers are, or the rowing clubs going on about it. The fishermen are going on about it. You know, we've got all these different assorted organisations that use the river. We are, you know, a river flowing through the centre of the town. This is our lifeline, our heart and bread and butter of the town, of what we've done. Is there any way that the volunteering officers could possibly write a letter to the environment agencies on our behalf, please, and also write to any other organisations that are required to go, look, this is now coming across multiple platforms, and multiple volunteers and agencies are being affected by not keeping up with what they're meant to be doing.
Councillor Staples. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. If you want to answer first, yeah.
On point one, in terms of warm hubs, obviously, yes, some of them were more well attended, some of them weren't. And what we have found is a lot of them have actually stayed open, because we found that people weren't going to them, particularly for the cold weather. They were actually going social isolation company, and so they have continued. I think you raise a valid point in terms of obviously not knowing what the winter's going to hold, so we can absolutely contact those groups. I've got a communities officer in the team that I would be happy for her to contact those groups as we come into the autumn to see if there's anything we can assist with. As Emily says, in terms of funding, if we get the opportunity, we will grab it with both hands. So we'll do that upfront work with the community groups in the autumn to see if any of them want to give it a try. We've got our established groups that continue to open through the summer. Point two, I'm happy to pick up any letter, but I think we can probably have a think about that one outside of here and pick that up.
Thank you. Councillor Staples and Councillor Welbury.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up, first of all, the rowing club. I've been contacted by the president, and the rowing club, actually, a lot of people don't realise, but people come to train on that for the Olympics. And so it is impinging on that, the problem with the weed. So I do think it does need to be addressed. And I take on board everything Mr. Bowles has said as well, because his boat, okay, might be a commercial, it's a business, but it also does an awful lot to promote Boston. And to me, it's a very integral part of Boston now, and he's done a wonderful job. And so I think we must support him in getting this weed clear. Okay, we can't grant fund him, but it's the least we can do to give him some help and support. And then secondly, warm hubs. I think, it's a shame when they have to close, because at Fishtoff we've worked very hard to keep ours open. We've now got up to 50 plus people coming most weeks. And yes, there's just a core group of volunteers that set it up in the morning and get it going. But we do offer and have supported people who've come into the group to do different things. So we've got art, glass mosaics, various activities now. And I think probably it's the activities that we've generated that have actually encouraged people to come to the group. We also do social functions. We're running a bus trip. We also give given members a card, so if they've got a problem, they can contact any one of us and we'll try and assist. So it's become much more. And I think probably what we are doing at Vichtoft could be probably a sort of flagship for what can be done, because I feel very, very proud of it. And so I have to sing its praises here tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Welbury.
Thank you, Chairman. I sort of echo what Councillor Staples says. I was involved with several warm hubs because I do a lot of volunteering. And in rural communities, there's a bit of a stigma attached to going to a warm hub. So we've changed ours into clubs. So we run an art club, we run a jigsaw puzzle club. We have a market group where people feel that there's no stigma attached. You're coming to actually build Lego, or you're coming to build a puzzle, rather than just sit there and feel warm. I mean, and as Councillor Staples says, there's a huge reliance on volunteers, and it's always the same groups as well. It's the same people that turn up week after week. It's the same people that care in all of our communities. And not only do they volunteer for one club, they probably volunteer for 3 or 4. And those resources are quite stretched. I think we really need to look at making volunteering more attractive outside those core people that always turn up. I mean, running the clubs myself, I know it can be very cliquey and it can be very daunting for new people to join these volunteer clubs. I don't know what the answer is, but the net needs to be cast wider, and we need to attract younger and different people, younger families. And so I think any ideas, that help to actually attract new people in through this sort of club mechanism, as Councillor Staples is saying about activities, should be encouraged and should be promoted. Thank you.
Just in response to that, if I may, please, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Yeah, in terms of our volunteer coordinator, she will actually be able to advertise volunteering opportunities. Now, we've looked at that in-house in terms of how they can look in-house, but I don't see a reason why we couldn't look to offer your volunteering opportunities. There are people out there that actually want to volunteer for their own social isolation reasons, and that might be to go and have a cup of tea with people and do a jigsaw. So I absolutely don't see why we can't do that. So again, we'll make sure that Alison gets in touch with all of these groups as part of her role.
Mr. Bowles.
Yeah, if I could just say that the bell's always available for anybody, groups to come on it. We can always do a special rate for it, because we do get all sorts of different organisations, and you're always welcome. Just give us a ring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to prove I've read the report, there's a typo on page 27, 4.4, fifth word in. But that aside, this again, I must admit, it actually, this job's getting slightly easier, because our reports are actually coming to us now, and they're clear. They achieve what they want to achieve. They're readable. We can understand them. We know where we're going with it. I think some interesting things have come out without of that. And so, first of all, we will deal with the recommendations, which is that the important role that the volunteer and community sector, VCS, plays in supporting local communities, residents in the enjoying healthy, fulfilling lives within the southeastern Lincolnshire is noted, that the current progress made between the SELCP and VCS is noted, and that includes the SELCP's Trusted Volunteer Scheme, and that members of the Corporate and Community Committee provide their views on the approach which we've provided. And I think in general, dealing with the report, we're actually happy. There's not much within the report, but there is the issue that has been raised by Councillor Mountain and others about the state of the river, which I do think we need to look at without that. And I also do think that we do need to maybe start looking at a piece of work on, again, how we expand volunteering in the community. I mean, again, not a rush piece of work, but something I think, I'm not too sure that might actually be EMP rather than here. So, but whichever one it is. But I do think we need to, we look at the work done in Fishtoft and done in these other hubs that have grown into things. And obviously we need to look at how that has happened and then how we can promote that even more and things. But I'm happy to move the recommendation from the chair. Is it seconded? Councillor Drayton. Those in favour, please show. Carried. Thank you. Again, we are now doing the really exciting bit of our work programme, which you can stay for if you want, but please feel free to go. So the final piece, I think. Yep. Yeah, is our work programme. Yeah, Councillor Izard. I thought you raised your hand about something. No. Yeah. Before you raised your hand. You need to make your movements more distinct. Yeah. So we've got the work programme in front of you. There are a couple of suggestions of things to add to it. There is an issue bubbling under as to the funding we receive for our bus services from County Council. There seems to be some disparity between what we receive, but also, so there's that one issue, but I think outside of that, we also need to look just a slightly wider about the provision of bus service in the town, what scope there is for the future. I know a few weeks ago, my wife wants to go to Lincoln on a Sunday, and you can't go from Boston to Lincoln on a Sunday. So you have to go by train to Skegness and then bus to Lincoln. And it, what? You have to go from Boston to Skegness to get to Lincoln. On a Sunday, there's no direct public transport from Boston to Lincoln. Yeah, but it does. You can't get to Lincoln. You could go from Boston to Grantham, and then Grantham to Lincoln. No, the Sleaford service isn't available on a Sunday. No, so on a Sunday you could go to Grantham and then go to Lincoln, but she went to Skegness and then. But there's no direct. Yeah, I know. I was quite astounded as well. So part of the reason I raised it. No, that is not astounding. So I do think we need to look at sort of the specifics of buses and bus funding and bus service in Boston and how it meets the community need, and then a slightly wider look at how public transport is. So that's one issue for us to look at. And then anybody else any suggestions? Councillor Isaac.
Yeah, I'm going to take your expertise around the table because I still feel I'm a new boy here. But I would like to introduce a new work stream that may also update past reports and recommendations already undertaken by Boston Council in the past. And this kind of follows the perception that HMOs are contributing greatly to fly tipping and minor forms of antisocial behaviour. Indeed, you might have noticed our MP made his maiden speech in Parliament, where he highlighted the issues of HMOs in Boston in particular and how they are used. I will, of course, take my fellow councillors on this committee's views. I was wondering if we could look around the issues of poor and inadequate housing faced by mostly migrant community and extend that to the education, access to public services, etc., etc. And I did dig this report out from 2013, and there was lots of 27 recommendations in it. And when I read some of the recommendations, they're still now here today. So I was kind of thinking that we could even look back on this report in 2013 and see just how we're benchmarking against that report.
Yep. So
if you would assist the committee, I did actually do a presentation and update on that report to the committee, just setting out exactly what had happened, and it was a really interesting discussion and debate because you're absolutely right. Some things have clearly fell off the radar, or the government told us absolutely not something they're prepared to do. For example, ANPR at ports of entry, etc., to tackle.
Okay.
Yeah, Yes, the task and finish report, but there are other things that could be done, and the committee undertook to consider what, if anything, particularly.
Yeah, we have actually on our work programme already is looking at that report for us to go into that. That is an item of work. So I thought around the same time there was a report on licensing of HMOs, and that was the one I thought you were talking about, because we came quite close to licensing HMOs in 2012.
Yes, I as I say, I accept the knowledge and experience of this committee because I'm still fairly new here, but you're quite right, Chair. HMOs are what I consider a main issue for Boston and the residents of Boston. And so whether we can do any sort of work towards that would be great.
We can, with more speed, we can look at HMOs. Looking at the 2013 impact of population change report is a longer sort of theoretical piece of work almost. So I think if we add HMOs to the work programme, and then bubbling under, I say we have got a review of that, of the 2013 task and finish group report as well. Councillor Alison Austin.
I'm not usually on this committee, as you know. Something that crossed my mind. Does any scrutiny committee involve itself with the economy of the town?
Yeah, that's not, it's the other one, it's EMP.
I'll say that for the reason, before I'd lost the battery completely on my phone, I was playing around.
Yeah, so that one will be under EMP.
No, that's fine then, thank you.
Andy has got 2 to update on, Chairman.
Sorry?
Andy's got 2 to update on the work.
Okay, yeah. So we've now got an update from Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. I'll amalgamate it with what you said. So since publication, colleagues have asked for 2 other papers to come to scrutiny on the 19th of September. Housing strategy for Boston and customer feedback policy. They've both been put on the agenda. So you have 2 items, should you accept those, for September. You've asked about HMOs. Having been head of housing for 20 years, I know as much about HMOs as anybody across the entire partnership, but I'm not going to write a report. That's for the responsibility of the new lead. May I suggest you've got 14th of November is the budget. Yeah. Clearly there will be an in-depth scrutiny on the budget. To lighten the mood thereafter, you may wish to ask me to support having a paper on HMOs brought to you. Yeah. I think it would be useful, given that, as I appreciate, not members aren't new, but I think that what might be useful to you will just be a review of what a house in multiple occupation is, what the legal framework around statutory licensing is, how many people, how many floors, etc., etc. That's always a good base mark, because so that everybody starts with a shared understanding. I can ask my colleagues to produce you information around how many HMOs that we have licensed, and then other intelligence around HMOs. Yeah, because there is often a misdirection around all HMOs needing to be licensed. They don't, only certain HMOs do, but all HMOs do have to meet a minimum set of prescriptions around safety, fire, etc., etc. And I think that certainly my colleagues in housing could bring something that would give you a lot of information that may then help you hone in going further. Would that be helpful for November?
Because again,
so
we need to move forward based on
put that on rather
than...
Indeed. And just picking up in relation to your bus service, I mean, that's an entire debate in itself in terms of funding. But I do know that the chairman, and not speaking for you, chairman has been contacted by the managing director of Borough Lane, the largest local bus provider. Whilst officers wouldn't be able to produce a report, you may find interesting, and I know this is scrutiny and we've got to be careful of the role of scrutiny, but it may be useful to invite her to just address the committee for a limited period of time, just setting out her view of the world in relation to public transport and bus funding, because that might then stimulate you later in your municipal year asking.
It's so much easier when you're working from facts rather than, I think. Oh, and just one other thing I've just thought of. we are meant to be this year doing a review of the council tax support scheme.
Yes, that's not,
And I would like that on the work programme.
that will be reviewed, and I think usually Sharon Hammond from PSPS requests to put that on the work programme when it's been reviewed.
They're doing a more in-depth review.
Right.
So, you know, I'd like a bit of
So should
reviewing.
so that will need to be signed off through scrutiny by February at the latest.
But I don't want to.
January?
Yeah, putting it politely, what I don't want is a done and dusted deal of what they've done.
Okay.
I want us to look at what they're scrutinising. Or what they're reviewing. I want us to pre-scrutiny a bit.
Right.
So I want a report on what the scheme is at the moment, what all the possibilities are, and where we go from, you know, how they're doing it. Yeah.
So if
whenever
the purpose of scrutiny, I mean, to be fair, Chairman, I think 23rd of January would be too late because we would need to be signing up to the policy within the budget process for 25-26. So that really brings it back to the 14th of November.
Yeah.
So with the budget, HMOs and a review of that would be a busy night, but I can certainly try and facilitate that for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So November.
And unless anybody else has got any suggestions for the work programme, I will end the meeting at 7:35.
Lovely.
Which is 5 minutes later than I was aiming for.